Welcome to our fourth session of our Facebook Live series, the Facebook Live series being self-care, and we've dealt with quite a few topics already. In the first week, we looked at just generally how we're coping, what our emotional conditions are, how we're coping with lockdown, and then we moved in the second week to mindfulness, and we had a lovely guest star, Dr. Margot de Koker. She is a mindfulness expert, so we dealt with that in session 2, how to cope with anxiety and depression and stress, and using mindfulness as a coping technique. You can also access all of these videos on our respective pages of both Listening Well and myself, as well as on YouTube channel, which I'll post a link to later. And then third week, we looked at navigating relationships. Jade Brown from Listening Well dealt with that in a beautiful way. How to navigate during times of crisis, which I think we all need help with. And then this week, we're going to be looking at trauma. Marelise Lerm, also from Listening Well, will be dealing with that and how to cope with grieving during this crisis that we're going through, how to cope with the loss of normal. And I think we can all identify with that. So I'm going to be bringing on Marelise, and she will be handling this discussion. Over to you, Marelise.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, welcome on a lovely cold day. I hope you're nice and warm to deal with this topic that we're going to be looking at today.
Oh, I love the cold weather. So this for me is a happy place. But I'm sure that everybody else listening has brought their cup of coffee along and maybe a blanket to just warm up a little bit. So
that's such a good idea.
Put the blanket down there. But I have to say, it's such a privilege to be here for everybody taking their time to come and listen to us. And it really is important for us to talk about these things because people are going through a lot. So welcome to everybody, and thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the
Yes, I'm going to bring up your slides now. Thank you, Marelise.
Thank you very much. Today, I'm going to be talking about trauma and grieving the loss of trauma in our section today. And before I start, I would like to ask anybody if anything that I talk about today or that we say, if it triggers any unhappiness or any emotion inside of you, please reach out to somebody who is able to help you and who is able to sort of help you navigate all of the stuff that you're feeling. So if we can move on to the next slide, I'm going to tell you what we're going to be dealing with a bit. So we're going to be dealing with trauma. What is trauma? Defining it. We're going to be looking at what is the loss of normal. We will also be looking at going through all of this and grieving the whole process. Gabor Mate is one of my favorite people, and he says that trauma is not what happens to you. Trauma is what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. And right now, there's a lot of emotions going on as to what is happening to people and how they're dealing with it. One of the reasons why we decided to put the self-care series together, and it just happened to coincide with the whole COVID pandemic, is that we realized there's a lot of people going through a lot of stuff, and it's very deeply inside of them. And we're providing a little bit of a platform to just help people. Please note, I'm not a trauma expert, not at all. It's just something I'm very passionate about. And if you've got any questions, please put the questions up there and we will deal with it as we go along. So types of trauma. There's 3 specific types of trauma. You're looking at acute trauma, chronic trauma, and complex trauma. Acute trauma is that one specific incident that happens, for example, a car accident. Chronic is something that is going on over a long period of time, for example, domestic violence, abuse, and it's not just one incident, it's over a period of time. Complex trauma, you are looking at a number of incidences, more than one type of traumatic incidents over a very long period of time. If you look at the global, I want to call it almost panic that is going on, it is clear to see that that is a type of trauma that's been going on for a very long time, over a long period of time. So it's complex trauma that we're dealing with. And some of the symptoms of trauma and complex trauma is something such as anger, irritability, mood swings, all of those things. People don't always understand that, and it's difficult to deal with. And specifically in the pandemic that we're experiencing at the moment, we're looking at moral injury that people experience. Specifically, your people in your healthcare workers, you're looking at your moral injury coming in when something that is part of a core belief system, it is part of who you are, it makes up your personality. And you have to now go against that. So when your nurse has been told that you have to make a decision between the 70-year-old man and the 35-year-old man, who are you going to put on a ventilator? Their training is to say, I want to save a life. Now they are told you have to make a choice. Whose life are you going to save? And if that continues over a long period of time, it can lead to burnout. It can lead to depression. All of these things matter because we need to start talking about it. I want to look at some of the traumatic experiences that a person can experience. And please look, this is just some examples. So if you have your own examples or something that you think might be a traumatic experience, please put it out there and then we can take a look at it. So some traumatic experiences you could be experiencing is a divorce or relationship breakup, loss of health, losing a job, loss of financial stability, a miscarriage, retirement. People say, but how can retirement be traumatic? If you have been doing the same job or been in the same company for 30 or 40 years, it becomes part of who you are. So when you are going into retirement, and often retirement is not something that people want to do, they're forced into it. They are now sitting with such a long period of time on their hands, they have to ask themselves, what am I going to do now? And for such a long time, they were so focused on work that is all that they knew. So they start questioning, who am I? Where am I going to now? Is my life over? And that is why retirement is such an important thing to look at and do it in the right way. Death of a pet. I've often counseled people where they've lost a pet and nobody understands the loss. They will hear things such as, just get another pet. And it's very traumatic for someone who's had that companion maybe for a very long time to feel that loss and to try and grieve through it, because now society is telling them it's just a pet, get another one. So there's almost like a bit of a guilt and shame going in as well. So it is a very traumatic event for a person who's lost a pet. Lost of a cherished dream, something you've always wanted to do and now you can't anymore. A loved one's serious illness, loss of a friendship, and loss of safety after a trauma, for example, a house break-in. And there was an article that appeared in one of I think it was the JAMA Psychiatric Journal, and it said, COVID-19 and suicide, the perfect storm. Because when people are looking at committing suicide or feeling that they want to commit suicide, there's normally a lot of losses going with it. And if I look at the loss of all the stuff that we've looked at, the traumatic events, there's a lot of loss. So you're looking at financial difficulty during the pandemic. People don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to have a job? They don't know. You are looking at changing in the environment of home. There's potential family that can be really ill. And the difficult thing at the moment is if a family member becomes ill, you cannot visit them. That in itself is traumatic. So not alone do you have a traumatic experience of a loved one being very seriously ill, you can't go and visit them. And that causes a lot of trauma. So on the next slide, I would like to look at what is normal. So thank you, Tanya. Morticia Adams, who is the matriarch of the Adams family, says, normal is an illusion. What is normal for the spider is chaos for the fly. So one person's normal might not be the other person's normal. And normal can be described as conforming to a standard, usual, typical, or expected. It is ordinary, everyday routine. It is established. It's what we know. When you have a pattern and predictability, you put those two together and you've got safety. You know what is coming. Now going through lockdown, everything was taken away. The stability was taken away because we do not know, is the lockdown going to be extended? Are we going to go back to level 4? Are we going to go back to level 5? When are we going to be able to go back to work? So there's no predictability. The patterns that used to keep us safe before, going to the mall after work or just stepping into a friend's place and say, hi, I'm just here for a cup of coffee, I want to vent. You can't do that anymore. So those patterns are gone. And that ties in with some people cope better with this than others. It's because they've got different coping mechanisms, different support structures, and even personality that comes in. Some people experienced it quite easy because their coping mechanisms has been in place for a very long time and it hasn't changed much. Maybe staying at home, working in the garden, chatting to friends on social media or plugging into social media, doesn't matter. And then you get people on the other side whose coping mechanisms used to be something such as, I'm going for a walk on the beach. I am reducing my anxiety by going for a run every morning. When I'm having an argument with my husband, I will take a step out a bit, go and have a wine with a friend. Those things are gone. And when your normal coping mechanisms are not in place anymore, that is when you start battling. You start experiencing this difficult feeling on the inside. But what I want to stress, and I want to really put this on the table, is say, please do not compare yourself to other people. There is no blueprint that says this is how you're supposed to be dealing with life when you're going through a difficult thing. Especially now, never in our lives have we experienced this. We never thought that we would be sitting in a lockdown. And somebody said, if you asked me 5 years ago, what do I want to do? The last thing they would have thought of was to say, I'm going to be sitting in lockdown, not being able to go to the beach. So there's no blueprint. Nobody knows how to deal with this. They are just dealing with it at the best way that they can. And the normal coping mechanisms that we have in place, such as smoking or having a braai and a drink with friends, it's gone. Because now people are telling you you can't do what you used to do. And that creates a lot of emotion. So deal with the emotions as they come along and don't be so hard on yourself. Take it a step at a time. I know that I was very okay for the first 2 weeks of lockdown, and then I had to go to the shop, and it's not just anymore going to the shop, say hi to the people. It was standing in a queue with a mask on, social distancing. So what I could do before, walk around the shop for hours, smell the stuff. Yes, I'm one of those people. I smell the things. You now have to go into the shop so quickly and out again. So something that maybe could have taken you an hour and a half before literally took me half an hour from the time I left home to the time I got back home. So that is how things changed for me. I noticed that, and I had to go and sit a bit and try and figure out what is going on the inside here. Do that for yourself if you've got a chance. If you can think of anything that you've lost that we would say was normal, please put it down for us, because other people also learn from you. And when you say the stuff and you verbalize it and you put it out, the person mentions it, it normalizes it for other people as well. Because part of the thing is somebody might be sitting thinking there's something wrong with me because I'm not processing it well. Meanwhile, somebody else is also not processing, but they're just too scared to say it. Coping with the loss of someone or something you love is one of life's biggest challenges. You may associate grieving with the death of a loved one, but any loss can cause grief. Any loss can cause that feeling that you're sitting with and you don't quite know what it is. I listened to a talk over the last couple of days, and somebody said it is that feeling that you sit with that is so hard and you can't really explain it. Maybe it could be grief. So allow yourself the time to grieve. Allow yourself the time to feel the loss, to really just sit with it. So I want to look at the types of grief that you can feel. So if we can go on to the next one. Dr. David Kessler, he co-wrote with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was one of the ladies who was absolutely, she blazed the trail when it comes to death and dying. And he co-authored with her. And he said that discomfort you are feeling is grief. That heaviness, that sadness, we're grieving loss. You're grieving the loss of normal. There's few financial difficulties, and you're also grieving for the loss of connection, because that is what we are. In essence, we as people, we are part of a herd. We want to belong. You want to feel that connection. Somebody said, yes, I'm an introvert. I want to be at home. I want to be sitting down, just watching my TV and being with my pets and those closest to me. But I also want to have the option of going out and seeing people. That's been taken away. That connection, that loss is not there. So David Kessler said that these stages of grief still applies. We're looking at denial. The virus won't affect me. And we're still hearing that. And I want to make sure that you guys understand this is it's not linear. So you're not going through denial and anger and bargaining and then sadness and acceptance. It sort of does this. And you can go from the one back to the other and then forward again. And then it goes topsy-turvy. So sometimes people feel this absolute, am I losing my mind? Because the one day I'm so happy and I'm okay. And not even the next day, a couple of hours later, I'm just feeling down. It's when you're moving through these cycles of bargaining and anger and denial and sadness, you're moving through the cycles. So when you start experiencing them, just sit with them. Say to yourself, it is okay to just experience this. Denial comes in when you're saying it cannot affect me. There are still people saying this virus cannot affect me. There are still people saying maybe it is just something that's made up. We don't know. I don't have the answers. I wish I had the answers. But it's there. Denial is a very valid part of the whole process. Anger, gosh, has there not been a lot of anger going through? And I can't but stop and look at all of the anger that is going on globally at the moment, and especially in America. And I cannot help but think, are they not maybe just experiencing grief? Are they not really experiencing grief for what has been going on for so many years? And how have they been allowed to express that? Grieving is such an important part of any process, but we sometimes want to deny it. The anger in our current situation, I can't go for a walk. I wasn't allowed to go for a walk. For those who smoke, they now have to go and buy from wherever they need to. And it's about being angry because something's been taken away of you, coming back to loss. Bargaining. If we stay at home during lockdown, all will be okay. No? It will be okay if I stay at home. So people stay at home for 3 weeks and it's all great. But then we want you to stay at home a little bit longer and stay at home a little bit longer. So people start bargaining. Okay, if I stay at home now, if I don't go for a walk, then I can go back to work soon. It's all part of that bargaining process. Sadness. How many of us really knows where this is going to end? And if you don't know something, the sadness is going to come in because we're sitting mourning the loss once again, coming back to loss. You are mourning the loss and you're sad. You want to cry. So those mood swings coming through again. I'm angry, but I also want to cry. You're not going crazy. You're being normal. You are simply having normal emotions to abnormal situations around you. Please. Then acceptance. So here we are. Let's figure this out again. Okay. I wonder if the banana bread situation where everybody went out and made banana bread, was that acceptance? I don't know. I wonder. David Kessler then further went on and he said there's a sixth stage of grief and it's called anticipatory grief. And this was very interesting for me because anticipation means that there's something in the future. So anticipatory grief is correlating with anxiety coming in. So if, for example, a loved one, now you're sitting wondering, is my loved one going to get sick? If my loved one gets sick, I can't go and visit them in hospital. Anticipatory grief also comes in when you're thinking, and I think for a lot of the health workers, this was something, I've got to go to work. What if I go to work and I bring it back to my children or my family or my loved ones? Anticipatory grief is increasing the anxiety as well because you keep on thinking about scenarios going through your head the whole time. What if, what if, what if, what if, what if the whole time? And you ask yourself, where is this going to end? And the more you're thinking those things, what happens? The anxiety increases. When anxiety increases, you start becoming a bit more irritable. Anger comes out, explosions, little bit small explosions come out. So during this course and on the next one, we are going to deal with how can we cope. But also, I want to look at some of the the myths that we experience about grief. So on the next slide, we are looking at what are some of the myths that we are working on. And if you speak about your pain, you are giving someone else the opportunity to also express their pain. A myth. A myth is something we believe that is not necessarily true. The pain will go away faster if you ignore it. Sure, it will come back to bite you in the butt, yes. Trying to ignore your pain or keep it from surfacing will only make it worse in the long run. For real healing, it is necessary to face your grief and actively deal with it. When it comes up, don't ignore it, because pain is going to be like a naughty child. The more you ignore it, the louder it's going to start screaming. Sit the child down, sit your pain down and say, what do I need right now? Do I need a friend to comfort me? Do I need to make contact with someone? Do I need to do a bit of self-care? Do I need to go and speak to a professional? Because if you try and put the pain down the whole time, you are eventually going to start stumbling over all the stuff that you've been putting under the carpet. And the stumbling part is going to be sore. That's going to be even more now. The second myth is it's important to be strong in the face of loss. How often do we hear big boys don't cry? Big girls don't cry. And it's nonsense. You're allowed to cry. You don't have to be strong the whole time. Because when we walk into that space of having to be strong the whole time for everybody else because they're expecting that of us and they're going to fall apart if I'm not the strong one, then eventually you're going to fall apart. And that's not going to help you or the other person. Feeling sad, frightened, or lonely is a normal reaction to loss. Once again, normal reactions to abnormal behaviors. Crying doesn't mean you are weak. You don't need to protect your family or friends by putting on a brave front. Showing your true feelings can help them and you. When it comes to children, they learn from how the adults and the big people around them deal with things. So when you as an adult, I know it is you're trying to spare your children, you're trying to spare the people around you, but you're also not providing them with a platform to be able to develop their own coping mechanisms. If you sit down with a child and you say, Mommy is a bit scared today. She's scared that maybe the virus is going to come home and the virus is going to hurt us. Then you're not saying to that child, don't talk about it, because that's often what we want to do. We want to hide things from them. But when you're sitting down with that child and you're talking to that child in a way that they can understand, you allow for them to ask questions. You are then giving them some emotional tools that they can work with, which is going to help them in future. Boys and girls. When it comes to emotional dealings and emotional difficulties, boys and girls experience them. It's just this myth that big boys don't cry. Gosh, if we just allowed boys to cry when they needed to cry, how far would we not have come in the world where we are today? Just a question. And there is no normal period. There is no normal timetable for grieving. You can grieve for however long and as much as you need to. One of the most heartbreaking things I've ever heard was when a lady lost her husband during a very traumatic time. And it was a couple of months after his passing, and her children were saying, you've got to move on now. You've got to get past this. When there's been such a strong bond, it takes a very long time. So if you're sitting with someone who is grieving, and yourself as well, be gentle, be kind, because loss is quite severe. And then moving on, how do we cope? Because I don't want to stay there too much. Let's talk about coping skills and coping mechanisms. And let's talk about how we can deal with this. So if you've got some coping mechanisms, feel free to put it up for us. Please feel free and say, this is how I cope. And help. It feels like I'm losing my mind. Gosh, I've said that so many times already that I'm thinking, okay, let's talk about this. One of my favorite people in the world, Basil van der Kolk, he is a trauma expert worldwide. And he wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score. In America, they've got quite a lot of clinics dealing with trauma. And they did a survey. I think it was about 12,000 people. I'm not sure, 12 to 15,000 people on adverse childhood experiences. And they found out that the age group above 60, those people who battled with things such as heart problems and diabetes and arthritis and all of those, the whole sphere, 23% of them experienced mom and dad fighting in the house when they were under the age of 18 years old. So whatever feelings and emotions you have as a result of the traumatic event, or whether it was acute, chronic, or complex, it is going to manifest in your body somewhere along the line. How many people are at the moment struggling with back pain? How many people are struggling, battling to sort of get out of bed in the morning? Headaches. When you're experiencing stress, it starts manifesting in your head. And if you do not have the coping skills in place, then you're going to battle. And it is about building coping skills. Your body is going to feel this. Your body is going to sort of hold on to it until you release it. It's just the way the body works. And I've divided this into two sections, looking at self and then also how do you help others. So the first part of helping yourself is you can't pour from an empty cup. It's simple. If this glass here is empty, there's nothing left, how much can I give to someone else? I can't. Because when you have to keep on giving and giving and giving and you don't have any more, what's going to happen? You're going to start becoming resentful. You're going to start becoming angry. And you're going to start giving from a resentful place. Never good. Never good for you or the other person. How do you fill your cup? We often think filling the cup means long walks on the beach or reading poetry or going into a Zen moment and it's just meditation. It's not. It's also saying it's all of those things, but it's also saying, how am I contributing to my own emotional distress? It's taking ownership of what is going on in your life. Then in our second talk, we had Tanya and Dr. Margot de Koker, and they worked on practicing mindfulness. And it is something that is coming up more and more and more and more the whole time. If you practice mindfulness, it definitely will help you. Dr. Daniel Amen is a psychiatrist in America, and he works a lot with neurological. And if ever you've got some time, go and take a look on YouTube. He initiated the research of the PET scans of the brain. So if you look at the differences in the brain of a person with depression or anxiety or post-traumatic stress, you will see that there are so many specific areas in the brain that is affected by these specific different conditions. And when you realize that, you go, oh gosh, it is in my mind. But it's not only in your mind. But he also came up with ANTs. He calls it ANTs. I love that. Automatic negative thoughts. So we often find ourselves in a place of an automatic negative thinking, automatic negative thought. Okay, going to give you an example. Oh, we're all going to die of coronavirus. Negative thought. Okay, how can we reframe that? We can say mortality rate is 0.4%. So 99.6% of people is going to be okay. Changing your automatic negative thought into something which is positive. The more you do that, the more your brain is going to start working in that pattern because your brain is built up of patterns going through. What happens if you do not look at the automatic negative thought? Your anxiety is going to increase. We are all going to die of coronavirus. And it piles on, piles on, and piles on. So just now we're going to do a short exercise in reducing anxiety, but we're still going to get there. And then others. This is something very important. How do we help others? Okay. Allow them to walk their own journey. Please. Step out of the phase and the space of saying you should, you have to. Nobody has to do anything, including you. Okay? Everybody is walking their own journey in their own path, in their own way. Yes, they will come to you. What do you think I should do? Give advice unconditionally without any expectation of them going to do what you're telling them to do. You are merely a bouncing board to get ideas going. Know when to keep quiet. Know when to just support there and sit and listen. and check yourself. I loved it. Last weekend on Saturday, I sat and I read something about what was going on in America, and I thought, oh my gosh. I put down my cup of tea and I put the phone down and I just sat with this. I sat with the emotion, and a couple of minutes later, the tears started running. The tears started coming out. And I was out of sorts for a bit. And then on the Sunday, Prof. Yassine Ali, who's at Nelson Mandela University, he brought the talk up and it hit home so much. So, Prof. Ali, you hit home. And it says, I need to check myself as well. So if something external happens, I need to check myself. Why am I triggered? What is the ego all about? Where's I'm sitting at? What is going on here? Because if I want to go and help someone, and it's not from a calm space in here, if it's from an angry space here, if there's fire going on, you're going to add fire to fire. And what's going to happen? It's all going to burn. But if you are sitting from a calm space, if you are saying, I'm okay, you will be okay. And the situations around you will eventually become okay as well, because you're allowing for people to run and walk their own journeys. And if you've got some other coping mechanisms, please share them. We all learn from each other. And it's about making sure that your cup stays full, okay? Because only from that full cup, from that overflow, are you able to give on to other people. It does not make you selfish. We're so raised with this idea that if you do not help other people, you are selfish. But if you do not have the emotional capability of helping someone else, how are you going to help them if you don't have it yet? So let's do that breathing exercise, please. And it is going to be a short breathing exercise. If you look at the beach that we've got there, it's a beautiful beach. If I close my eyes, I can actually imagine the waves going back in and the wave coming back, going out, and then come in again. And when the water comes in, I just want you to breathe in for 3 minutes, for 3 counts, and then out for 6 counts. So imagine the water coming in for 3 and out for 6. So just close your eyes, just listen to my voice, and imagine the water coming in for 3, 2, 1, hold, and then out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In again, 2, and out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In, 2, 3, out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you feel yourself stressed out, try this. It's a nice, easy exercise. 3 in, 6 out. And in conclusion, for my last little bit, please remember you are doing your best right now. Remember to be kind to yourself always, and you are just trying your best. There isn't a blueprint to say this is how you're supposed to handle the difficult stuff. Write your own blueprint, because every time you write it and you rewrite it, you learn a little bit more. So I would like to thank you for your time and for listening to me. So I would like to ask Jade and Tanya to come back in, and then we are going to work through any of the questions that might have come up, and we'll take a look and see where things are coming up. Hi to everybody who's been listening and checking in, sort of taking. Hello, Jade.
Hi, Marelise. Thank you so much for this talk. It's really been very encouraging and insightful.
Thank you.
Like that.
Has there been any specific questions? Because I've been trying to focus, otherwise I'll be like a chicken on a hot plate and lose my train of thought. So is there any specific questions that has come in that we can look at?
I think what a nice one is just to bring up Gemma's comment again, because I think it's something that I'm hearing a lot of people wanting to know about the children. So I'm so glad you mentioned the children. Lots of people don't realize the impact this is having on them, and they also need to know how to cope with this whole experience.
Okay.
So I think, can you comment on that, Marelise?
Yeah, I think what I would like to do is maybe ask Jade if she's got some input, because she's had some experience in dealing with with children. So what would you say could be a nice way of helping children to cope with this whole experience?
So if I go back to my talk last week, Marelise, I spoke a little bit around feeling safe. And I can imagine if parents are feeling safe, if parents are feeling less anxious, that helps children to feel less anxious as well. And also just having the freedom to feel scared or to feel anything they need to, just to validate their experience, really. And once they have that sense of validation, it just helps to process, like you say, that grieving process, or it is a sense of trauma, just to allow them to process and to feel safe and secure within their home, within their family environment. So, and I guess that also calls then to parents to fill their own cups as well. Because when your cup is full and you're feeling secure, that does spill over into your children's lives as well, and they get to feel a little bit more secure as well.
Okay, because it also, thank you for that, because it also ties in with what Liz Marie said. What can we do to help children that is struggling with going back to school and coping with the lockdown? So it ties in very much with you. If you are okay, child will be okay. Talk to them, talk to it. Okay.
And
I see.
And Tanya,
Yeah.
I don't know if Tanya had something to say there with regards to children.
Yes, I think what you said there, both of you said is great. And I agree with you, Jade. It's the parents, it comes back to how you as a parent dealing with it. If you can express your own feelings around it, if you can show them how you coped with it, I think that just helps give kids and children a kind of a safe space, because they look to us. They look to us as their role models. And I think the schools are helping a lot as well, in terms of, I've seen quite a few structured processes, and I think that just creates a structure and the familiarity of how to deal with this out of the ordinary circumstance. Yeah, I think that's just what I wanted to comment.
Okay. A question I'm thinking about, what would a person do if your child says, I don't want to go to school as a result of this? You've got the option of homeschooling me. Why don't you do that? How do you as a parent handle that situation?
Yeah, that's a difficult one, because the schools and the governing boards and education department are also reminding us that, yes, we may decide to keep our children at home, but then we've got to register for independent learning, for homeschooling, and are we geared for that? And then there need to be the correct forms filled out. And then what about next year? Then you've got to apply for a place again. So I think there's some difficult decisions, and it really comes down to parents considering the needs of the children and what they're able to cope with, and then discussing it in a very open, honest way. But yes, it's a very, very hard call for all of us to make. We're desperate to have our children continue with education in a safe and secure space.
Absolutely. We've got an interesting comment from Ritz as well. Chronic stress decreases the immune system response, which won't assist in fighting this virus or any health condition. Maladaptive coping mechanisms, such as avoidance, will unfortunately not assist with stress in the long term. Self-care and healthy coping mechanisms is not always easy, but it is extremely beneficial. Thank you. That's brilliant. Yeah, true. Healthy coping mechanisms, it's always there, but we are always so quick as well to grab the chocolate cake or grab the gin or the smoking. What are some of the healthier coping mechanisms we think could be used in the event of not being able to go for a walk or chatting up with friends? Tanya, from your side, I'll start with you first.
Well, I think I'd like to come back to just number one, which is for me is a key thing, is our support system. It's really being able to reach out, creating a plan in advance, especially when things are going to get harder. But what are we going to do when we really feel desperate, when we feel alone, when we feel anxious? Somebody just yesterday was saying, but I feel like I don't feel like going. I don't feel like actually reaching out. And she's forcing herself to. So that's a difficult one, especially if you haven't created that safe space for yourself, or people that you feel really understand you, who are not going to be judgmental, who may be going to tell you to just get your act together. So you need supportive people around you, or somebody, even if it's just one person, to reach out for help to doctors and psychologists and whoever you need to create that supportive space. And then my personal favorite is mindfulness, is because it's something you can do, like you did beautifully there, Marelise, just with the breathing in that moment, and just come back to yourself, honor yourself, process whatever feelings you're feeling. Because absolutely, I agree, Reets, avoidance is not going to help. It's actually just going to create a big problem down the line. I don't know if you guys want to say anything.
Yes, I'll start there and kind of just go back to your immune system being affected. So if we think of what you said, Marelise, about Basil van der Kolk's "The Body Keeps the Score," you know, if we are holding all of this trauma and this loss without processing it, it does have an impact on our immune system as well. So having healthy coping skills like using mindfulness, leaning on your support system, going for a walk, even if it's in your yard, if you couldn't get out of your four, walls that hold you in, to find creative ways of keeping yourself active and healthy, not just physically, but emotionally as well, because we've now seen that there's such a connection with the body and our emotions and our thoughts and all the rest. Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. I also found that reading, I love reading. And during the time of lockdown, I could not read. I still have difficulty at the moment where I will read a passage in a book and I have to put the book down. But as I started looking for information about this, I realized that it's actually quite normal, because it's difficult times, it's abnormal times. So the normal coping mechanisms, like you said, find creative ways. Bake banana bread. If you can bake a banana bread, bake a banana bread if you can't read a book. So you find different ways of coping with it. And thank you. Thanks, ladies. It's also said, yes, she said, regarding the previous question on the children, perhaps clear instructions on keeping themselves safe and reiterating that they can protect themselves is important. It would probably give children a bit of control regarding the uncontrollable situation at the moment, moving from a space of I can't do anything to I can do something. Of course, this will depend on the child's development stage. Sure, very, very valid. Empower them and give them the ways that they can sort of look at how can I protect myself. Maybe the practical stuff. This is how you keep your mask clean. What you can do. I read something this morning where they said, don't try and eat through your mask. Don't sneeze into your mask. Small practical things to just sort of help the children and take care of that. So I just want to touch on the topic of domestic violence as well. It's something I feel we have to talk about, because now alcohol, the ban on alcohol has stopped. So immediately there was an increase on these incidents coming forward. And we've talked about this a little bit before. And I just want to say to ladies or gentlemen, if you are experiencing any domestic violence, it's never okay. Never try and talk through it. I'm watching Seven de Law now because I'm riveted in front of it, because they're tackling exactly something like this, where the gentleman has gone through a very traumatic childhood and he is now actually turning into a very abusive partner. Listening to the words that he's saying. Once again, if you're being triggered, please find the help. We've got some wonderful resources available here in PE. For those not in PE, if you're looking for someone out of PE, send us a message and we can see how we can help you. We know people might not have the money for medical aid. We know facilities that is free of charge. So if you get stuck, please give us a shout, or please call me, or I don't know what they call it these days, or WhatsApp or whatever. We can try and help. Is there anything that you ladies think is important that we need to touch on here? Grief and loss of normal?
Yeah, I just want, I think you did, I think you did mention it briefly earlier, Marelise, but I just want to bring us back to this now, because when things get more out of control and more chaotic, maybe this is going to become a problem for some. Suicide and suicidal ideation. Could we maybe just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. The federal hotline in America, they reported 100% in calls coming in for the same when compared to the same period last year. So it means that people are experiencing emotional distress. We don't know how to handle this. And initially, COVID-19, there was a lot said about comorbidities such as hypertension, diabetes, and all of those things, but nobody really touched on your mental health concerns. What if people has been pre-diagnosed with depression, pre-diagnosed with anxiety? Maybe they're already battling some form of grief or whatever in the process as well. And I think the second wave is going to come, but the second wave is going to be mental health issues. We are going to see an increase in depression. We're going to see an increase in anxiety. There's going to be a huge increase in post-traumatic stress. And there was already reports of health workers committing suicide because of what they were going through and experiencing every day. And it's important to talk about these things so people can understand when you do start feeling those feelings. And I've heard it a couple of times already. I want to check out. I don't want to be here anymore. I can't stand this anymore. Okay. When you start hearing those words, take note and just say, okay, what do you need right now? How can I help you? If somebody else is saying that to you, ask them, how can I help you? Bring in a professional if you're not a professional and say, okay, I need help with this person. What do I do now? If you feel it's yourself, take a step back, please. Take a slow step back, sit down and just sit for a bit. And ask yourself, what do I need right now? What do I need in this moment right now? Financially, guys, it is rough and it's going to be rough for the next couple of months, if not for a year or so. Okay. Reach out to the bank, reach out to anybody and say, help me. It might feel like this is completely overwhelming to you, but reach out. If one door closes, go into the next one. Okay. If you need comfort, who do you need comfort from? If that person's not there or not available, then give it to yourself. Dig in, dig deep, and give it to yourself, because you wouldn't be here if you weren't supposed to be here. It's tough. Yes, it is very tough when you're sitting in that space. You do not feel like reaching out. It's like sitting in a mist, and you cannot see past the mist. You cannot try and put a hand through that mist, but just lift your hand, because somebody's keeping an eye out for you. So even if just lifting the hand, it means that somebody could say, a hand is up. I'm going to try and pull through to get to that hand. Sit with it, try and reach out, even though it's difficult, and I'm going to put emphasis on that, but reach out. Okay. Jade, anything from your side? What do you think if a person is sitting there feeling like that?
What comes to mind for me, Marelise, is staying in the present moment. And sometimes when we think of the future, and if we think of the financial stress and you know what's going to happen next, that can really bring a lot of anxiety, fear, and panic. So I would just say stay in the present moment and ground yourself using some of those mindfulness tools. What can I see? What can I hear? Use your senses just to ground yourself where you are. And then what is my step that I can take in this moment right now? And sometimes, just as you say, some form of self-care can help you to get to your next step. Making a phone call to somebody that needs assistance can be the next step, or reaching out can be the next step. So just to think of what is the next right step right now. And not thinking too far ahead, or not looking too far back and comparing what life was before and what life is like now. Sure, and there's some sirens going on at the moment, and kind of just making me really think of people that are in a really serious situation, that are not finding hope. Sometimes we have to reach out to others if we can see they're in a hopeless place. And we have to find hope for ourselves. What is hope? How can we bring hope? Make it alive again. And something you mentioned before, Marelise, around moral injury, and I think that's a difficult one at the moment, where our value system is being challenged because things that we love to do, things that we invest ourselves in, we have to pull ourselves away from. And if we think of people in the mental health, or not just mental health, I mean the health system in general, they've got so many decisions to make, and they've got to leave their families at home and be at work for a long time, exposed to the virus. There's a lot of burden. But I think if we can find some kind of hope, that really makes the difference, definitely. So let's find ways, creative ways of livening up hope again.
Yeah. Whether it's a special song or a movie or anything, to sort of just look at that and try and find base with that. From your side, Tanya, anything that you think people could really, how could they find hope?
Yeah, I think it just, I just reiterate what Jade also mentioned and what we spoke about during the mindfulness session. Coming back to the present, coming back to your senses will help ground you in the current moment. And yes, I think we've heard this so many times, we're all going through the same storm. Yes, we're not in the same boat, but we are all being exposed to this trauma, the grief, the anger, the whole pandemic. But how to look for what is okay right now? It could be the nature, going out into the garden. It could be fresh air. It could be as simple as a glass of water, and actually just bringing back our focus into our senses and grounding that within ourselves. Because if we're too into the future, worrying about the anxiety, or we're going into the past and looking at what we've lost and what we're sad about, we're not living right now in this current moment, which is really all we have. And as hard as it is, to come back to what we are feeling. I read a lovely article that was looking at comparing what we're going through now to what everyone went through in the 1918 pandemic, and where they said actually there was like a collective amnesia that happened because people were also going through the war, and so people would build a whole lot of statues and monuments reflecting their sense of loss. Whereas now, I think we are going through. We now have a lot of mental health. We know about self-care. We're much more open to talking about it. So that hope that you're talking about, Marelise, I think will come in terms of the support bases that we all have, and much more support than I believe we had in the past. To be able to look inside, to make that meaning, because all of us are going to, at the end of this, have a narrative about this trauma that we've all gone through. And if we also then just focus on perhaps not blaming something or someone, because in a trauma, they say we like to have a victim and we like to have a perpetrator. So to come back to the fact that possibly there's no one thing to blame, but we do need to address the inequalities, which I think this is trauma is bringing up for all of us.
Yeah, and I want to touch on what you said. It's bringing the inequalities. If I look at, there's a lot going on in America at the moment surrounding the inequalities. And from a South African perspective, it's important to sort of just sit back and say, and this is my personal view, is just that sit back and see what's happening so we don't repeat that on our side as well. Yes, we've got a lot of stuff, own stuff going on the whole time. And just see, okay, how do we sort of navigate this? Becoming aware of what's going on in the world around us, because there's a lot going on all over. And just sort of bring it back home, bring it back here, bring it back to myself. And sort of just, because when you do look at all of these things and you look at all the negativity, there is a part of you that sits and just like, I can't deal with this anymore. So unplug. Spend a couple of hours or a weekend where you're completely unplugged from everything around you. Get more sleep, because there's also been incidences where people have been recording or reporting that they're having very strange dreams. And I know when it started, it's like weird dreams coming through, like more weird than normal. And it was actually reported as well that that is part of your mind processing everything that is going through. So if you are getting dreams that is a lot weirder than normal, you might be a bit more afraid to go to bed. So you're sitting on the two opposites, where you are so tired because your mind has worked so hard, but you can't sleep. And that increases your vulnerability with regards to your mental health. So maybe just unplug as well for a little bit and just say, I'm going to choose where I'm going to, where I'm putting my attention, and I'm going to get more sleep. Maybe sometimes it's as simple as that, as to try and get more sleep as well. Okay, so I'm seeing our time is going to start running out as well. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who has contributed and given their thoughts and given their input, and these two lovely ladies as well giving their input. Thanks to everybody who said hi and taken the time to clock in with us and just give their views, because views are important. Everybody's view is important at the moment. If we start listening to each other's voices and really listen to sort of not just respond, but to sort of, your voice is important to me. I want to really hear what you are saying. We are taking away from the global narrative that says you're not important, because you are important. You as the person are important, the person sitting in front of me. And that also means I'm respecting you and I'm respecting myself. Okay, so you do what is good for you, but also for other people, and the trees, the dogs, and the llamas, and all those other birds and bees out there too. So, Jade, if you just want to catch up with us, what we're going to be talking about next week. So I want to say thank you to everybody, and I'm going to say goodbye.
Thank you very much, Marelise. You were amazing. I'm just
Thank
going
you.
to remove myself as well, and then Jade can just prep us for next week. Thank you to everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Okay. You're still there. Okay. So thanks, ladies, and thank you, everybody. We've really had a lovely time with this self-care series. And just touching on what Marelise mentioned there, I heard something this morning by Jade Brown around humanity, and really just honoring and valuing humanity a lot more. Once we can do that, we can look after ourselves a bit more as humans, and learn how to look after others as humans as well. And with that, we are going to be going to our final part of our series next week, which will be an open discussion. So bring your questions. We can still touch on some of the things that we have mentioned, the mindfulness, relationships, trauma, grieving. But if you have something new, and we really want to avail ourselves, we are 3 professionals in the mental health industry, 2 psychologists and a registered counsellor. If you want to ask a question, now's your time. And think about it. If you want to ask a question about depression, anxiety, coping, anything like that, we just want to leave the floor wide open so you can have some questions. We do want to also make sure that all questions remain obviously respectful and honoring of everybody and everybody. So with that, and I think we have like 2 minutes left, I just want to say a big thank you. We have really enjoyed the series. We've really enjoyed stretching ourselves in this process, but also just listening and hearing what everybody has to say, and the response has been amazing. The comments, the questions, and we just hope that we can offer something that is valuable to you. I mean, if I think about it, mental health services can be so expensive. So we want to make something accessible that's not too prescriptive, but just open discussion where you can have some questions. And we don't want to be diagnosing or giving any formal advice, but really just giving a space and opening up a space where you can chat about these kind of topics around mental health, self-care, loss, grieving, this normal that we find ourselves in at the moment. Sometimes just to talk through it really, really helps to find make sense of where we are. So I'm going to say thanks one more time, and I hope to see you all next week. And please bring some friends and family along, and people who have questions. We'd really love to engage with you, to hear your voice. Thank you so much.